Gamers can be a pretty voracious bunch, always looking for more content, devouring every screenshot, trailer or update the industry's publishers decide to throw their way.
So with 2012 well and truly behind us, and in the spirit of looking forward, we here at That Xbox Show have decided to choose our most anticipated Xbox 360 games of 2013.
Casting the largest shadow across the year is the latest entry in Rockstar's blockbuster series Grand Theft Auto. As is usual with the behemoth franchise, details are hard to come by, but what has been revealed is that players will take control of not just one protagonist, but three. As well as providing a richer narrative backdrop, this will hopefully mean a welcome departure from some of the series' more monotonous mission types, with GTA 5 offering more diverse missions that utilise the skills of all three characters simultaneously. The game is expected to evolve nearly every mechanic from previous games, and with the weight of the narrative success of GTA 4 and its expansions on its shoulders, as well as the recent successes in Red Dead Redemption and Max Payne 3, expectation for GTA 5 is extremely high. It's hard to imagine Rockstar dropping the ball in this one, so whether you play GTA for its story, for its explosive missions, or for its sandbox freedom, you can be sure this is one game you'll want to pick up.
Our next choice had to be Tomb Raider, the new reboot of the franchise from Crystal Dynamics. The game, perhaps unfairly, sparked controversy and brought the issue of representation of women in games into the spotlight, something obviously bigger than any single game, but it also managed to wow gamers with a fresh take on the series. Players will be presented with an open world title spanning 3 large chapters, with gameplay that combines action-adventure, platforming, exploration and RPG elements, all rolled into one gritty, character-changing experience. Gamers can expect the usual meaty campaign, laden with side missions and collectibles, as well as an all-new multiplayer mode, which is a first for the series. Aesthetically, the game looks amazing. The jungle setting can look both gorgeous and terrifying, and the weather effects can be breathtaking. The developers have performed an astounding job in making the new game feel more gritty, visceral and realistic. If ever a series was in need of a shake-up, it was Tomb Raider, and it looks as though this new game is set to do just that. With a new style and emphasis on narrative, gamers can expect something fresh as they go on a journey through what makes Lara Croft become the castaway, the victim, the survivor, and eventually, the legend.
I hate tombs.
With Gears of War 3 bringing closure to the story of Marcus Phoenix and being what seemed like a swan song for the series, you might have thought there wasn't much more to be said from Gears of War. However, with the new Gears of War Judgment, Epic and developer People Can Fly want to show you just how wrong that thought is. In a clever narrative structure, this prequel to the original Gears of War sees Damon Baird on trial in front of a military tribunal. This setup has allowed the introduction of in-mission bonus objectives known as declassified testimonies. These serve to provide extra challenges to players and expand upon the existing lore of the universe. In an effort to make this latest game feel fresh, the developers have been keen to change some of the established gameplay traits of the series too. Much of the heavily relied upon cover is absent, forcing players to rely on reactionary run and gun tactics. Fans will be happy to know that the ever popular multiplayer component is making a healthy return with some new advancements, including a new class system, which will have players specialise in a chosen role to better serve team strategies. To many fans, Gears of War Judgment might seem a bit arcadey, but at its heart, it's still a Gears of War title, and as such, you can expect the explosive action, tight controls and amazing visuals that has made the series so popular to be at the forefront of the experience.
Seen by many as the true successor to Irrational's 2007 smash hit Bioshock, Bioshock Infinite sees the dank, flooded halls of Rapture swapped out for the bright, interconnected islands of the floating city in the sky, Columbia. Set in 1912, the game follows the story of Booker DeWitt and his companion Elizabeth. The once grandiose city has fallen to political unrest on a catastrophic scale, and players must protect Elizabeth and themselves from the two warring factions, the Vox Populi and the Founders. Much like Bioshock before it, the choices the player makes within the narrative can change the course of the game, but now the focus is shifted to what you learn from the choice itself, rather than the result the choice creates. The mechanics of the series have evolved too, with the upgrade paths of your abilities varying wildly. The modifications of Bioshock's plasmids and tonics also return under different names, but now with alt fires, allowing the player to create a broader combat experience more tailored to their particular playstyle. Combat takes place not only in the ground, but soaring through the air as you ride the sky rails that connect the city. In the ever complex and visually stunning dystopian settings that Irrational conjure up, there seems to be a conscious effort to make them more enthralling and captivating than the previous efforts. Amazingly, Bioshock Infinite looks set to be just that.
Touted as the premier sandbox shooter of 2013, Crytek is pulling out all the stops with the latest entry in its sci-fi, near-future first-person shooter series, Crysis 3. The battlefield is once again your playground as we rejoin Prophet in his fight against the corrupt Cell Corporation. Encased in a massive nanodome, the city of New York has been overrun by wildlife. Visually, it provides an interesting fusion of the settings of the first and second games, and has inspired Crytek's artists to create some genuinely jaw-dropping environments. Gameplay doesn't stray too far from the established formula, with the nanosuit giving gamers the ability to switch between different modes at any point during combat. New weapons are thrown into the mix, most notably the bow and arrow. This is a weapon obviously created with stealth play in mind, as you are able to use it in conjunction with the stealth camouflage power of the nanosuit. This could potentially change the way you approach encounters in Crysis 3 dramatically. It would seem that there has been a realisation that much of the fun in this series should come from the experimentation of the combination of the abilities of the nanosuit and the weapons, rather than set-piece shooting galleries. It remains to be seen if Crysis 3 can truly expand upon the previous entries in the series, but with encouraging enhancements to gameplay and what looks to be a perfectly competent multiplayer offering, it's hard to think of reasons not to want this game.
Xbox. 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 Bing Halo Waypoint. Oh, for f***.
When Dead Space 3 was revealed, there was a lot of confusion surrounding the developers' intentions. The public was presented with a game that seemed to place emphasis on co-op play, while the developers maintained that the game would still stay true to its horror roots. But then the publisher, EA, admitted that they wanted to lower the barrier to what they thought was keeping potential customers away, namely, the scares. Now, when the original Dead Space was released in 2008, it was something of a mini revelation. Here was a game that balanced tight, satisfying shooting without descending into a bullet fest, as well as creating a genuinely frightening and unsettling atmosphere that kept me well and truly on edge. No game had managed that since Resident Evil 4, and even then, that game could never be described as truly scary. In Dead Space, they created a world of genuine horror. It was a game where you made cautious, tentative steps round corners, where darting shadows and muffled whispers would stop you in your tracks. It was also a very lonely game, with the few other characters involved in the story often only seen in fleeting moments as they asked for help. And it was that sense of isolation that made the dark scary, that made the flickering light at the end of the corridor take on a greater meaning, and it's the most obvious thing that Dead Space 3 seems to get wrong. Many people already thought that the series had taken a misstep in 2011's Dead Space 2, with the emphasis shifting slightly from horror to action, but the first impressions of Dead Space 3 were that it barely even resembled the slow-paced horror of the first game, instead choosing to go gung-ho, spraying bullets into a variety of ridiculously large enemies. Unfortunately, the demo for Dead Space 3 does little to shake that impression. This is a game that definitely has combat at the top of its priorities, and while it handles that side of things quite admirably, it's a shame to see the last traces of horror washed away in favour of action. The series hero Isaac Clarke is still on a mission to destroy the markers, and the demo begins with him having crashed on the planet Tau Volantis. Here, darkness is exchanged for blinding snowstorms, and the tight corridors of Dead Space 1 are swapped out in favour of epic vistas and wide open spaces. Visually, the game is at times breathtaking, and certainly has a unique style amongst the third-person shooter genre, and the developers have done a brilliant job of conveying the harsh climate of the frozen planet setting. But make no mistake, this game looks different to the Dead Space you know. The usual body horror enemies are now joined by humans who want to stop Isaac and his team from destroying the markers. Unfortunately, encounters with the humans in the demo are limited to very brief firefights before they're mauled by roaming necromorphs, so it's difficult to tell whether they'll inject some variety into the combat of the final game. There are a whole host of new features, including the ability to create custom-built weapons, which complements the traditional upgrade system from the previous game, as well as some very combat-focused abilities, like taking cover and a roll move to avoid attacks. But the biggest new addition is the co-op, which, while still following the same basic story of the single player, changes some key points to complement the extra player. Puzzles will require you to work together, and enemies will require a little bit of teamwork to take down. There's a little back and forth dialogue too, which unfortunately, based on the demo, doesn't seem to be much more than the usual Space Marine mixture of expletives and puzzle signposting. But with the emphasis of the game now being on action, it actually does fit the tone quite well. On a technical level, it's actually one of the finest and most subtle examples of co-op play I've seen in a game of this type. However, the co-op does reinforce the fact that this is a different type of game to those previous in the series, one that's swapping creeping dread for shock and violence. And for some that's going to be a step in the right direction, but for me, I can't help but feel that unfortunately, the series has lost its way. Most people understand that first impressions are important. If you're going to go for a job interview, you're going to take a shower and dress smart. And if you're trying to sell something to someone, you're going to want their initial experience with your product to be a lasting positive one. In the video game world, the best way of communicating your game's value to your customers is through a demo. A demo is beneficial for both the publisher and the player too, since the publisher has a chance to show the very best of what it's trying to sell, and the player gets a better understanding of how the game looks and plays. Demos have become so important that they've become little events in themselves, the promise of early or exclusive access becoming a really powerful marketing tool used to sell pre-orders or sometimes completely different games altogether. And it's with that importance in mind that it's completely staggering just how many publishers and developers seem to get it wrong. A demo should be engaging, not boring. This is your chance to impress the player, so don't give them some slow-paced, hand-holding tutorial mission. Don't patronise them either. You made them stare at a controller map for a minute's worth of a loading screen, so you don't need to tell them to press A to jump. And stop telling them how to play the game. A puzzle isn't a puzzle if someone tells you the answer. Just like the best games, the best demos are about discovery, playing with consistent rules and finding what you can and what you can't do. Great demos always provide plenty of content too. If you can give a player a reason to replay your demo, then you've got a second chance to show them just how great your product is. Some great demos can even be a bit deceptive, showing portions of the game that don't really represent the greater overall experience. While it is a bit cheeky, as long as that content's in the game and not some completely separate entity, I think most people will get on board with it. I signed up to be entertained, and if you've done that, then I'll let it slide. But are demos always a good idea? If your game's no good or is still unfinished, do you want people to know that? A bad demo can kill all the hype and enthusiasm players might have for a game in one fell swoop, so why risk it? Is a bad demo worse than no demo at all? It's hard to come up with any definitive answer, but I do appreciate the transparency that even a bad demo provides. They might be a bit crap, but at least they had the decency to tell me. I honestly believe that just like trials are available for every Xbox Live Arcade game, there should be accompanying demos for the bigger game releases too. Gaming is an interactive experience. This is the core of what separates this medium from film and TV, so while trailers and screenshots might be great for building hype, demos provide the most honest and realistic experience of what a game is like, good or bad.